Hello, this is Jen with Winddance, Farm and Earth Education Center. I'm joining you today for a story read called Flute's Journey. It's about the life of a wood thrush. They're spectacular birds. This story was written and illustrated by Lynn Cherry. And these story reads were supported by Volunteer West Virginia's Be Kind grant. So Flute, as I said, is a wood thrush. There's lots of birds in our region. Look at all those beautiful birds. After the story, there's going to be a little craft idea to help inspire you to invite birds into your backyard with a feeder project. Now, the wood thrush may not come to a bird feeder in the winter because they're migratory birds. They've left the Appalachian mountain range. Let me come over here. Where we are here, and made their journey all the way down into Central America. It's a much skinnier piece of land. However, as winter descends upon us, they are still having quite a bit of growth and sunny weather. What do you think that the wood thrushes may be in search of? Some people think birds migrate simply to escape the cold, but they're also in search of food. So let's learn a little bit about Flute's journey. Flute's journey, the life of a wood thrush. Four lovely turquoise eggs lay in a nest in a small dogwood tree in Maryland. In this nest made of leaves, mud, and fine rootlets, the eggs were warmed all day and night under the breast of the mother bird. Inside the eggs, baby wood thrushes grew until one day in May, feeling tight and squeezed, they began to peck. Each pecked and pecked until it pecked apart its eggshell and emerged into the wide world. The baby birds were tiny, wet, and featherless, naked but for a bit of down. Their eyes were closed. So there's the nest made of, do you remember? Mud, leaves, and fine rootlets. So many different materials birds make their nest with. That's another picture. The hungry wood thrush chicks let out shrill cries and reached with outstretched necks. The parents flew back and forth all day, bringing meals of insects and soft, squishy worms. Eating heartily, the young birds thrived and grew. In 3 days, the chicks' eyes opened. Gray pin feathers covered their pink and gray skin. They began beating their small wings, strengthening them. 7 days later, feeling squeezed in the nest that was now too small for them, the chicks hopped to its edge and out onto the branches of the dogwood tree, beginning to explore their world. The chicks tried out their wings, fluttering from one branch to another, then to the ground and back again. They had left the nest. They had fledged. But still, wherever they were hungry, the chicks would call and their parents would find and feed them. Deep in this ancient forest, known as the Belt's Woods, the young wood thrushes were safe from most dangers. Cats and raccoons would not bother them here, but they kept alert for hawks, black snakes, foxes, and people, particularly 2 children who came every day to watch them quietly. 3 of the young wood thrushes and their parents kept their distance from the children, but one of the fledglings, who had a few unusual white feathers on his head, flew closer and closer to them each day. The children named this bold young wood thrush Flute, for they knew that when he grew up, he would sing as beautifully as his father and that his song would echo through the forest like the clear, sweet music of a flute. For 3 weeks after he had fledged, Flute's parents continued to feed him. During July and August, his baby feathers fell out, and in their place grew the long and lustrous feathers of a handsome juvenile. Now, whenever Flute or his siblings came around, they were chased off by their parents, who knew that their youngsters had learned to take care of themselves. September came, and a cool breeze ruffled Flute's feathers. Autumn leaves turned gold, red, and yellow. The shorter days and dwindling light gave the birds the urge for going. Flute ate as many berries and insects as he could find, and stored up fat, energy for the long flight ahead. Then, one evening, as if a message was carried on the wind, Flute and many other wood thrushes lifted up from the forest and took to the air. Did you guys see how the wind is blowing just as we reach that point in the story? Isn't nature magical? The stream of songbirds flew south, joined along the way by other streams, until a river of migrating birds traveled together through the night, thousands of feet above the ground, protected from hawks by the darkness. Isn't that a beautiful description? A river of birds. Let's take a peek at that map again. Oops. So here we are in the Appalachian Mountains, as Flute begins his journey with the river of birds all the way down to Central America on the migratory path. Oh, look, I see here a dogwood tree and a spicebush berry. Seem like they're two important plants to the wood thrush. Let's learn more. As morning light made the birds visible to predators, Flute looked down at the land. He saw thick woods below him and flew down to find cover and to feed upon insects, snails, and slugs on the forest floor. He gorged on spicebush berries and dogwood berries and rested for 3 days, then continued at night on his long journey. I didn't know that. They flew during the night. Pretty impressive. The following dawn, Flute flew low, looking for woods with berry bushes. But where the woods had once been a forest, for miles, he saw only paved roads and suburban development. Finally, he saw below him a spicebush grove planted around a school by children who wanted to help migratory songbirds. He flew down and fed to his heart's content. Flute took to the air again, and in several days he reached High Island, off the coast of Texas. There he joined throngs of other birds. The thicket rang with bird calls as the birds feasted to store up energy for their flight across the Gulf of Mexico. One night, in a huge burst, Flute left land and flew in the same direction as the winds. He flew for 20 straight hours, for 600 miles, over the water until he arrived on the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, where he rested and fed. So here we go. Flute has made his way from the Appalachian Mountains all the way down to Texas. And then he's going to cross over this big Gulf of Mexico. Let me hold this more properly. So here we go. Flute's left the Appalachian Mountains, flown with a river of birds on their migratory path, right to Texas before they're going to cross the entire Gulf of Mexico. Good thing they ate a lot of spicebush and dogwood berries along with insects before making that journey. And then they'll reach the Yucatan Peninsula. Many of the migrating birds stopped in Mexico to spend the winter. But for another week, Flute continued south through the forest of Central America, feeding along the way. Finally, he arrived in the Monteverde rainforest and Costa Rica, where his ancestors had come to winter for generations. Migratory songbirds from all over North America congregated on this green mountain, while others just passed through the Monteverde forest on their way to their wintering grounds farther south. Some of the birds were Flute's neighbors from home in the Belt's woods. Other migrants had come from different parts of North America and were unfamiliar to Flute. In Monteverde, where Flute was trying to find a suitable place to live, he joined flocks of tropical birds that live in Costa Rica year-round. These indigenous birds never fly north, but here in the tropical rainforest, there was enough food for all. Remember, food is what drives some birds to migrate south in the winter from our region. Oops. After searching for several days, Flute found an unoccupied tree at the edge of the forest. He made sounds like churr, 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 and a bold rat tat tat to warn other wood thrushes to keep away from the territory he had claimed as his own. From October through March, as snow fell in the cold north, Flute was warm and well fed in the Monteverde forest. In the cool mornings, Flute tossed dry leaves to find the tasty insects underneath. In the heat of the day, he took a siesta. Each afternoon at precisely 4 o'clock, he visited a bird bath in a yard at the edge of the forest preserve. Here he is in his bird bath. This forest is called the Bosque Eterno de los Niños, the eternal forest of the children. Many forests in Costa Rica are being cut down, but children from all over the world have raised funds to help preserve this one as a home for the songbirds and the other forest creatures. Soon after Flute's arrival, another wood thrush came to the Monteverde forest. He had arrived late in Costa Rica and found his former winter home gone, cut down for pastures. The newcomer flew at Flute and tried to chase him out of the forest, but he was not able to drive Flute away. This would be only the first time that Flute had to fight to stay where he was. Many birds were searching, flying from fruiting tree to fruiting tree, wandering around the edges of the forest, trying to find a new home. But Flute, though young, was bold and able to defend his winter territory. Now next week we're going to gather to find out what happens as Flute makes his return back to the northern hardwood forest where I am today. I love learning about other creatures because when I learn about what it is that they need for their shelter, for their nourishment, where they make their homes, then it helps me to be a little more informed, and it helps me make decisions that can help to protect them. So I was wondering, when you listen to this story about Flute, if there's any things you pick, anything you learned about him and his life that might help you help him. I know for one thing, I'm going to plant some more spice bushes in my yard at home. I put in a dogwood this year, and I'm going to continue to plant things that are helpful for the migratory birds. And for the birds that aren't migrating, there are birds that overwinter in our area. I put out a bird feeder. One of the reasons I put out the bird feeder is to help nourish the birds, and also because it draws them in closer, and when I watch them, it just brings up so many I wonder questions. Wondering what are their names, matching them with my field guide to learn what is that bird who's not quite all red but has a little reddish hue that just showed up in my bird feeder. And then I can look through my field guide and identify them, learn more about them, learn more about how I can help protect them and keep this earth beautiful for all of us to share. So I hope you guys will enjoy the craft and maybe make a little pumpkin bird feeder to learn about the birds that live in your neighborhood. Next week, we're going to find out about what happens when Flute returns from the Monteverde rainforest back up to the Appalachian Mountains. So I hope you'll join me then, and maybe we'll have another activity. Enjoy the craft.